All right, so please help me welcome Dena Merriam to the Magic Hour.
Hi.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
we're so
you.
excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, your bio, which if you guys have not like heard of this woman, this is going to be, I think, a new intro into a realm that a lot of our listeners maybe haven't played with before. So I think this is going to be really fun. This conversation is something we're excited about. So Dena, it seems like you've lived a few lives simply in this lifetime. So tell us about a few of the highs and lows that brought you to who you are today and to this work you're doing today.
Well, it's true. I have had a few lives within this one physical body, as we all have, because if you look back at your early years, it seems like a different lifetime.
Yes.
So I started meditating at the age of 20. I found my guru, Yogananda, and began a very serious meditation practice and a student of the sacred texts, and did that for about 20 years. I was married, raised 2 sons, got divorced. And then after I've been meditating for about 20 years, just really without my intending, got involved with the interfaith movement and began organizing interfaith programs. I saw a lack of women's involvement in the interfaith world. And so I began trying to get more women involved and balance, create more gender balance. And so I created this organization, the Global Peace Initiative of Women, because the women wanted to be more active in peace building. And so we did dialogues all around the world in many of the conflict areas. And in the process of doing that, I began to have very vivid recollections of my previous births. It would be a place that I'd gone or a person that I'd met that would trigger something. I wrote about this in my book, my first book, My Journey Through Time, Spiritual Memoir of Life, Death, and Rebirth. And so that went on for quite a while before I actually ended up writing about it. And the work evolved and developed. We moved from peace building to environmental work, to climate change, to mentoring young people. And then I wrote another book called The Untold Story of Sita, because of a pilgrimage I took in India. And then this book, When the Bright Moon Rises, came to me just a few years ago, also through travels, when I began to have recollections of a totally different time. I've always had an interest in history. Since I was young, I had an interest in history. But seeing beyond the external facts as we learn history, really looking at the evolution of human society and our own spiritual evolution, because I've always assumed that I've been around for a long time, that this wasn't, the beginning and end of it, that life keeps going on and life was a long past and a long future. That was just something I was born knowing. And so my interest has always been to understand how it works, this law of cause and effect that guides us, that directs us. What are these spiritual laws that frame our life? That's always been a driving curiosity of mine. And so that's what led me to writing my books, to sharing it publicly, to sharing my experiences publicly.
Fascinating. So when you say that the book kind of came to you, how has been the experience of kind of downloading this information?
Well, there are 2 parts to the book. One takes part many, many millennia ago in India, and a love story that doesn't find fulfillment. And then it resumes in China 9,000 years later, where these 2 beings reconnect and the love finds fulfillment. And people always ask me this: what's the process for you? I can't say what the process is. It is like a downloading. It's like I'm just carried into another realm, and I'm experiencing the life of that being. Whether it's my own past or whether I'm channeling somebody else, I can't tell. But I experience it as my own past. And I see a lot of resonance with my current life. I have seen that every life that I've seen, there are certain personality traits that remain. They may be subtle. Nobody else may notice them. But for example, in this book, the second part where I talk about this life in China, it's a woman poet. She's an unknown poet, but she's married to a famous poet. That's a theme that has been with me for a long time. Interest in poetry and writing poetry. As a child, I used to write a lot, but it's not a predominant part of my life now. It's really a minor part, but it's something that I was born with. Always drawn to poetry and love to read and to write poetry. So I can't say whether this is really my past life experience or whether I'm downloading another for some reason. In my effort to show the karmic connections and how karma works and how it's an ongoing journey. One life is a chapter in a long, long book, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's something that we definitely want to hit on with you is how do we better understand the laws of karma or cause and effect, like you're mentioning here? Where do we start with that work?
Well, I think the first understanding is that we have a history, because everything that happens to us has had an earlier cause. Nothing is arbitrary out of the blue. So it's our relationships, it's work, it's our health, it's financial life, it's where we live, who our friends are. Everything comes together from an earlier cause. And it could be not just your previous life, it could be 10 lifetimes ago, because when the conditions are right, that's when the relationship will emerge again. Mm-hmm. So it's, as I've spent so many years studying this law of cause and effect, I see it as an amazing weaving of so many factors. And it's like the logical mind can't see it all. It's like this intuitive mandala with all these interconnections. But we know that if you're in a beautiful relationship, it's likely not the first time you've come together. You've worked on that in the past.
That's what I was curious about.
You're finding the fulfillment of that. If you're in a challenging relationship, there's a history to that. Mm-hmm. And the choice is to resolve it or to face it in the future. So one thing that seeing my past has done for me is made me realize that there's no judgment, there's no punishment. We create our own situations. And if the past creates our present, then we are now creating our future. So we can more consciously shape the future that we want.
So is it likely that in each reincarnation, we're reincarnating with the same like soul pod, the same group of people?
Yes, I think it may not be the same group every single time, but you've had, there could be 3 or 4 people that you've been with in your past life. There could be a few people from the life before that. And some people, you know how life is, people come and go in your life. Some people are there for 2 or 3 years. I've had experiences where I've had intense work relationship. 3 years later, the person is out of my life. And I know there was a karmic connection and it did what it needed to do.
Yeah.
We completed it.
Yeah. And Intuitive recently told me that one of my close guy friends was a father in my past life and a brother in another past life. And it sounds so like such a weird piece of information to get, but when she said it, it resonated right away. But when we talk about karma though, is it the case where like each life we're clearing it out until we get to a place where it's been healed basically, or, we've dealt with it. And then in that life, that is the life where maybe there's more enlightenment or we're more a light body, or how does that play out?
Or even is there a place where we're headed? Like, or is it,
when does it stop?
Or is there not?
We do graduate. That's
what
graduate.
Maybe I rephrase the question as, is it meant that each life gets easier because each life we heal a little bit more? Is that correct?
Easier is not the right word, I don't think. I think maybe more aware. There's definitely, if you look over a period of time, you definitely see an awakening process because you learn. So, if you hit your head, knock your head in the wall and it hurts, you might do it again because you don't realize it. But the third time you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. You eat too much, you get a stomach ache, you might do it again. But at a certain point you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. So we learn. So there's a growing awareness. But some people have very challenging lives, and either they've consciously decided to work out a lot of karma in that life, or to work out very difficult karma to be free of it. And so the easiness of a life doesn't necessarily resonate or doesn't indicate a level of consciousness or awareness. I know someone, my family, everything worked out for her. She was healthy, even though she ate terribly. She had a beautiful marriage, healthy children, great finances. Everything worked out for her, but she was an unhappy person and not a very awake person. And so I say to myself, she just had a vacation life. For some reason, she had all those things in place, but it wasn't challenging to her. It didn't serve her to ask questions. I mean, our challenges are there to help us grow, to help us go deeper. We want to know why, and what's the end goal of this is to move into a higher state of being, and
which is what some may call heaven, right? Like, I think it was Peter Crone who told me that like in each life, we do come closer and closer to that light body, to the point where when we do reach that stage of enlightenment, then that once we've, completed a certain amount of enlightenment, maybe we move into the
celestial realms.
Yes, where that is pretty much heaven, the connection, like we're one with source. We become this one big light body all together. I don't know.
And then there's a juxtaposition come in where it's like, but also don't seek enlightenment, and also let go and surrender yourself. So you're not, trying so hard, because then we get into that suffering as well.
I think that the more we live for service, to service the whole, and to be here. I mean, at a certain point, you're not returning to fulfill your karma, your unfulfilled desires, your desire for relationships that are unsatisfied, but you're
Mm.
returning to be in service to the creation, to help
Mhm.
others. I mean, there are loved ones that are not there yet that you don't want to abandon. So at a certain point, you're
That
taking
makes
birth
sense.
to be of service. And then there comes a time where you could also be of service in the celestial realms, because there are many levels to that as well. There are
Yeah.
beings who don't reincarnate on Earth, but may go through different cycles within the higher celestial realms.
Yeah. And we want to go into that with you too. What are the cosmic forces that are also called deities?
So
I know
in
you
a
were
book,
more talking about entities, right? Is that what?
deities. I mean,
Okay.
the word in Sanskrit for deity is deva or devi, which means light body. They're light forms, right? So that they don't have physicality as we do, but they're beautiful and they can change shapes and they can change. I mean, there's much more flexibility and fluidity in those worlds, and they can be of two types. I mean, there are beings who have not been human but who are born in that world and who provide service in that world and who help wherever in creation help is needed. It's not just Earth. I mean, there are many planets with life forms. The universe is huge, right? So there are many places to be of service, right? But then there are those of us who are going through the human experience and who reach a point where we graduate and where we don't take rebirth, and where we stay in those realms and are of service in those realms, wherever. I mean, all of life is about serving the collective awakening, serving the collective good. Those realms, which I've just peered into, and I describe a little bit in my book, because it's also a place that we return to between births. So we're familiar with that. But there's a great forgetting when we have to start over with the human body, and so we suppress the memory of our previous births and of the celestial realms. But the celestial realms, there are many beings there with which we're familiar. It's not a foreign place to us, and they're in service. I mean, they're guiding us. I've been very aware of relationships with beings in the celestial world at different times in my life.
That's fascinating.
How can people, I feel that people who may be sensitive to that energy feel a bit of fear when they feel that energy of like another deity or being around. How can they start to release that fear and not worry so much about those other realms, maybe hurting them or
Being quote unquote evil.
Yeah.
In the Abrahamic terminology, we might call them angels, right? Doesn't mean that they have wings, but they're benevolent, higher beings. When people feel fear, and I when I was younger, I experienced a little bit of that, and I think that you can. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have our memories, or why we suppress our memories, because it would be overwhelming, if and we're meant to focus on what we need to do in this life.
I think I do have my memory.
Some of us, but it can be destabilizing. It can be destabilizing. And I think seeing other beings can be destabilizing if you're not very, very grounded and rooted in a spiritual practice and very set on your spiritual path. When you are set on your spiritual path, things happen. It's an evolving, an unfolding. And so you do see things and you do become aware of things, and you feel presences, and it's been mostly benevolent. I mean, there are rascals out there too, be careful of and stay away from. But I think for people who feel fear, should keep themselves grounded on earth and should just not go into the exploration, because it challenges the worldview, our collective worldview that most of us live with, which is this is all there is. And unless you're ready for that and really open to that, somebody might not know what to make of it.
Yeah, but it can be such a beautiful experience to access the fifth dimension, but it does mean that you're opening yourself up.
It does. And what happened to me, and I think this is where we are as a human community, completely changed my relationship with death.
Right.
Because most people have a fear of death, right? I think that's sort of inborn in us, so that we try to preserve ourselves. But when you, and those celestial realms in scientific terms would be called other dimensions. And I think science is beginning to acknowledge the existence of other dimensions. Our sight is limited. We only see on a certain spectrum. Our sound ability to hear is limited. But if we expanded what spiritual practice does is it heightens your perceptions. so that you can see into those higher realms, those other dimensions, and you can hear things that are spoken there, or music that come. And it is beautiful. I mean, why would you want to close yourself off? I mean,
I think, like you said, being grounded, because being able to access that Christ consciousness, Mary Magdalene energy in the fifth dimension, if you don't have that psychic hygiene and you're not being embodied and grounded, then you probably could pick up stuff from the fourth dimension, or maybe a deity or entity may sense your openness and ability and want to be, channeled through you while you're trying to, channel the fifth. So I think that maybe too, if there's that fear, just to be even more diligent in your spiritual hygiene, maybe, right?
That's a good way of putting it. To be more diligent. I think it's a very good way of putting it. And I think if you have someone that you call upon, whether it's Christ or your guru or whoever, that's your protection. That's your ultimate protection. And so to kind of enter into this realm, into the openness of the universe, one does need protection.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's important to have an external protector, or, external is not the right word, but something else beside your own inner warrior or your own authority, to be able to call, like, have you found that important in your life, is having a higher power or something that you can lean on in that sense when you feel like you might be at the, crux of, I don't know, surrendering against something? That I just always have this is just a conversation that seems always ongoing for probably all of us. It's very existential, but this external force idea, or this
being like a crutch
evil,
or something.
Well, no, not a crutch, just because I mean, hey, if it works for you, it works for you at the end of the day. But I'm saying the sense of external evil coming at you, and the way that, and maybe that's death. Sometimes, the fear of death might be really what that actually is at the core. But that idea of this thing that's going to get me becomes something that sometimes motivates people to seek some sort of higher power or dogma.
It's going to save them instead.
Yeah. And there's a delicate balance there, right? But I was just wondering, Dana, from your perspective, and maybe even from your own life experience, is that something that you ever kind of looked at or weighed out, in your journey? I'm not formulating this question very well, but just
I know what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. And it's actually a very important question today, because I found my guru very early, young. I was 20, and he wasn't in the body. He'd already left the body, but he left an organization. And basically, he gave me all the practices that I needed to deepen my spiritual life, my meditation practices. At certain stages, one needs a guide, right? And he explained a lot about the laws of the universe. I came to understand karma in a different way. At a certain point, he became an internal presence. And so what your question is, do you need another, or is it all within you? It's all within you. It's all within you. I mean, a guru helps awaken that remembrance of who you are. And so it's very helpful for some people. But I see, especially today, that a lot of people are going through that because there's so much available, so much knowledge available, that a lot of people are going through that without the guru. Yeah. I mean, and for many, the guru is Christ for many people, right? So I had a guru from India, but Christ, I know people for whom Christ is the guru, is the living guru. Doesn't matter whether he's in the body or not, but Christ is inside. It's an internal presence. And so the guru is inside. And that was one thing that my teacher always said: the answers are within you. You people do use that as a crutch. And if you need to use it as a crutch, I'm not judging that. But all of the answers are within. And if you can access those on your own, that's wonderful.
Do you think it's just where we're at on our journey, depending on how we perceive that relationship between it being something external that you're holding on to and trying to protect yourself with, or the internal authority that you're using to stand your ground where needed or stay grounded where needed? Do you think it's our journey as humans, like you're talking about with past lives and coming through almost like stations or levels of being able to integrate that part of you so that you can finally be in your own inner authority? Do you think that is just, we're just on different parts of that journey, and that's why it's important not to judge others for where they're at, and why it's important to not judge ourselves for where we're at, and that type of thing?
I think that's true. I think there's also an element of the times in which we live, when there's so much accessible now. You can learn practices of meditation. You can find sanghas online. I mean, there's so much more available than there was, say, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Where you had to seek out a spiritual teacher. I mean, for the past how many hundreds of thousands of years, if you wanted practices and if you wanted to learn about spiritual matters, you had to seek someone out who could teach you,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And so I think it's a little bit of that, and I think it's also different places we are on the journey. But what I have found through my spiritual mentors, my guru and the others, is that they awaken a certain quality of love.
I agree.
And that's something that you can't get online. You can get meditation practices, but it's that quality of love which is mutual. You know, I have felt at different times in my life when I've had difficulties, my guru's presence just pouring love out to me. And I have a very, very special quality of love for that being. And so it's the love relationship. And at the foundation of it all, I mean, what we learn as we move up the scale is that it's all about love.
Yeah.
Love is the foundation of the universe.
And that brings up a good point too. I know for me personally, my guide is Mary Magdalene. And through her, I have received so much mothering, so much love. And for me, that's never been, or it's not been a crutch where I'm not having to mother myself, but it's taught me to mother myself. It's taught me how to be a mother to my inner child. And so that makes me wonder though, because I have been told by an intuitive that I worked with Mary Magdalene in a past life, like we worked together, and that now she's my guide. So I'm curious, do we find our guides through our past lives? Like our guides in, from our past lives, basically, people that we worked with?
Yes. And Mary Magdalene is clearly very active today because there are others that I know. I don't know if you know Mirabai Starr, Cynthia Bourgeot. Yeah, both of them have been bringing forth that energy as well. And so definitely, I think that there's a past connection. I mean, what draws us to one and not to the other? It's all our past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, on this podcast, we talk to a lot of psychologists. We really delve deeply into the Jungian psychology and shadow work and that type of thing. And I find it so fascinating, the different modalities that as humans we use to get to integration, that we get to finally embody or remember those lost parts of ourselves. And it's fascinating to understand the difference of this, like, maybe in science, they might call it like almost generational or gene trauma that causes you to live a certain way and act that out in your life. And then when we're talking about the work that you do and talking about generational, past lifetimes and generational traumas that come through those lines, or even generational characteristics, like you were saying, whether it's a positive skill or a trauma or wound that you need to heal. I just find it super fascinating to see the different systems that as humans we can intellectually hold and then figure out how to experientially do that during our lifetimes. Like for me, I'm very prone, you can probably tell just by the way I talk, but to that intellectual side. And so that's why Jungian psychology is, I guess has always interested me. But when we get into that idea of the celestial realm, we get into that idea of something that feels intangible. I think for a lot of people, and especially for me, before we began this podcast years ago, it was almost scary to kind of play in those realms that don't have any black and white nature to them, that are purely gray, if you put it that way. And I just wonder if that was ever part of your process, or were you always emotionally based, had a really good emotional foundation you were able to kind of go into those places that seemed, non-scientific. I don't like to say it that way because I think science is uncovering a lot of that now, but that were in those realms that just didn't have a black and white nature to them. Was that something that you had to move through?
Oh boy. My first past life recall, which was, I guess I was in my early 40s when it happened. I had been married to a psychiatrist for many years. I was divorced at this time, a single mom raising my two kids, working at a job. And I started remembering my birth just previous to this, which had a lot of trauma to it. I was born in Russia. I was sent out during the revolution, separated from my parents, never saw them again, ended up in Europe, and then had to deal with the Nazi period. I wasn't in a camp or anything, but I had a lover who was. And so there were a lot of traumas that I was experiencing around that. Here I was as a single mom, taking care of my kids, going to work, thinking that I had flipped out. Here I am finding myself locked in another time realm. It took me about a year to work this through. And, because I was married to a psychiatrist and because I'm a very grounded person, I'd say to myself, okay, you're holding a job, you're raising your kids, you're doing it all, so you're not crazy. But I was, I would be in a meeting at work and be remembering Germany in the 1930s.
Wow.
And it's why I don't encourage people. I say, look, if your memories come back, they come back. It could be intense, because if you've had an intense life, it's one of the reasons we don't remember is because it's a huge distraction. And so I actually had a bit of a scientific side to myself. I went to the places that I saw. I saw where I had died in Prague in the early 40s. I went and found the street. I went to St. Petersburg to look for the street where I had seen as a child. So I checked myself out in so many ways. Universities that I didn't know that suddenly I was hearing, I would ask people, is there such a place?
Like they say, recognize, you're remembering it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I then after a period of time, maybe it was a year, maybe it was 18 months, that finished and I started remembering the life just before that. And again, I started checking things out. So for the first few episodes, I was I was still young and, unsure of my steps and wondering if I was imagining the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
And so after a while, I began to have faith in what I was seeing because it was beginning to come together as a cohesive picture and it was beginning to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, it does make sense. It all makes sense. I mean, there are no real surprises in it.
Yeah.
And I think that introspection, there's so many pieces to ourselves. As at the end, after I had seen many, many lifetimes, I said to myself, I'm it all. I'm that one and that one and that one.
Yeah.
And then who am I? I'm none of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I'm curious how many, when you talk about that, like how far back in time can a soul go as far as their experience on earth? How many lives could we have lived? Like I have one friend who was told his soul is as old as dirt. Like it's just so old. And I'm just curious, like how many lives are possible? How far back could we have gone?
Very far back, tens of thousands of years. 100. I mean, the earlier forms of the human species, Neanderthals or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are evolving, and so we awaken with it all. And I think that I'm still on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
In the book When the Bright Moon Rises, I go back to a life about 8,000 BCE, and it's very vivid recollection in me. And I relate to certain parts of it, and I don't know if there'll be more. I mean, the journey's unending, right? I mean, talk to me in 5 years and I may have a lot more to say. Both going back in a history, but what interests me more now is, maybe it's because of the stage of life that I'm at, is seeing more into the other dimensions, into the celestial realms, and understanding more the way things work in those higher realms. Because there does come a time when how you don't want to keep repeating and and going through the birth again.
Yeah. So that's another thing I'm curious about. I'm able to see past lives. I typically see them as a movie almost screen on the right of them. And then for me, instead of seeing them, it's like even with my eyes open, it's as if they're closed and I'm experiencing them. And I've maybe experienced 5. All of them had very traumatic deaths, but the one that I will share with you really briefly, because I have a question about it. There was a life where there was a group of people, a small group of people who my gut feeling told me they weren't safe, but I wanted to help them. So I went along and helped them. And then they ended up robbing me, slitting my throat. And there was, a ton of blood loss. And then here a couple of months ago, my esophagus tore in 3 places. And the way that came about, which I'll share on another episode, it's a long story, but the way that it came about was I did not listen to my inner wisdom, like to my inner warrior. I went against my own intuition and I ended up in that situation. So when I came out of that and saw those 2 lives, saw that past life lining up with this, my work was to promise myself and my soul and all future lives that I will never transgress myself like that again. And I'm curious, how can someone open themselves up to their past life so that we can heal patterns like that and not repeat them in current or future lives? And when I made that commitment to myself, is that part of that work? Is that why?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, things do get repeated. I mean, that's how you learn, right? And so making a commitment to be alert and to be caring and to take care of yourself it's as if you're communicating now with your soul, because it's the soul that guides you, right? And we often don't listen because there's a clutter of other things that get in the way. But the more we can clear out the clutter, the more we can get that direct intuitive guidance that we need. So I definitely think that your response to this most likely helped clear away that pattern. That's the we have so much conditioning, repeating of behavior and patterns of thinking. And people tend to think of karma as just relationships or health issues, but it's also patterns of thinking and patterns of behavior, lack of self-confidence. Well, that's probably been with you for a long time. If you difficulty finding your voice, all those kinds of things. And at some point you have to face it and challenge it and move beyond it and resolve it. It sounds like you did that.
And how can others open themselves up to that, maybe, so that they can, I'm sure we all want a easier next life. So, or not easier, like you said, but
more
to
awakened.
be right. And to not be repeating the same patterns, at least.
I think the first step is recognizing your challenges, the patterns that are difficult. We all have a difficult relationship, most of us. I mean, some people get vacation lives, right? They can't think of anything that's problematic. But if you look more deeply, there's a pattern of behavior that you want to change. It's either a difficult relationship, a difficult work situation where you just can't get it right. Whatever you try, you're not successful at. It takes an application of your will to surmount that, to change a habit. I mean, you know how hard it is to change habits. Try stopping to drink coffee if you've had coffee every day of your life. To change a habit takes willpower.
And then you got to go through the withdrawals.
Yeah. And it's like changing a pattern of behavior, and so introspection. I mean, even if you don't see anything about your past, if you introspect about your life, the things that even if you don't admit it, but you really inside know are problematic for you, are challenging, and then you make a real effort to work on those areas.
So, and you brought up the vacation lives, and it makes me think of, everyone goes, oh, I just wish I could sit on a beach and drink margaritas. And then you go and you sit on a beach and drink margaritas for a day, 2 days, maybe even a week. And then you're like, okay, what else? Because challenge is life. I mean, that's what makes it exciting of course, having some balance of take some rest days, to recoup and then go back out and do the challenges. Cause I think that's the service that you're talking about, is facing the challenge, doing the work essentially. And so when we play in that realm, I wonder, in the realm of challenge and introspective work, I think is very challenging, for us all. Does it take, or do you believe, you talked about the person you knew, I think it was your family member who was on a vacation life, or you witness these people having these vacation life. Is there like a tangible characteristic that you think that in this lifetime they aren't experiencing, almost like intellect or like some sort of intelligence? That's a big word, right? But that they just aren't embodying in this lifetime for some reason. And so they just aren't going to touch that stuff. They aren't going to dive inward that way.
Well, I found that it all depends what your purpose is. If you want to understand life and the universe, then you're going to dive in. But if you don't, and a lot of people are happy just to be on the surface of things, just let it be easy for me. Let me have a nice marriage and enough money, and I'm content with that. That's all I need. And so there are a lot more people like that who are just want to have a contented life. But is that true happiness? I mean, there's the more awakened you are, the more capacity there is for joy and for love. And so the beings that you see in these higher realms, how would you describe them? They're beings that are filled with love and joy. And so those who aren't content with just a little contentment, sitting in front of the TV and watching a good series, push forward to get more. They want what they know is their true nature, which is that intense love and joy.
But I'll tell you, in the middle of some of these times where I feel like I am pushing, I'm like, why can't I just relax and be super, like I have gratitude for what is, and I can get into a gratitude practice, but it's like, what is that part of me that pushes anyway? Like it knows it could relax right now, but it decides, let me push. I
think that from what I'm sure of my experience, it's like you do like my intuitive Mary Margrave said that like I've done 3 lifetimes of work in this one lifetime, and I always choose the fastest, not the easiest. And that now it's time to choose the easiest. So I think you get to this point where you're like, this is no longer good for me. And then you let the trauma unfold naturally instead of digging up the trauma, it's what in my experience, I don't know if you agree.
I do. I think it's true. And I think we all need to take a break.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, as you said, the gratitude practice. I mean, there's a lot just
The
to be
sacred
grateful.
pause.
Yeah, the sacred
Yeah.
pause. And, and with this COVID time has given so many of us, people have experienced it in different ways, but for many of us, it's been a sacred pause of, aha, I don't have to be rushing around. I don't have to be out. I can be in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm
It's
curious,
a contemplation, moment of contemplation.
On top of what Mercedes asked, why do you think some people are so skeptical of past lives? Like there's times when, and I've gotten to where I don't take it personal anymore, because it's like if you tell someone like, if a Christian were like, yeah, I speak in tongues, I can speak in tongues, and someone's like, well, I don't believe in that, then you're basically saying they're playing make-believe or they're a little crazy, But so if I tell someone, maybe that I believe in past lives or that I can see past lives, and they say that they don't believe in that or there's no way that's true, I've gotten to the point where I no longer feel they're calling me crazy, and it's, completely separate. It's just where they're at, where I'm at, and no one's better than the other. But I'm curious what causes that skepticism where it's an immediate, no, I don't believe in that. Do you think the obvious answer is probably a bit of the religious programming in our culture, but
fear? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fear. I think I think also, first of all, they don't have any memories, or they they so suppress the memories. But isn't it easy to think that if you just, show up at church, that you're going to end up in heaven forever and you're going to be happy forever? I mean, isn't that an easier thing to think?
And it's also, you'd think they're running from fear in the one situation, but that to me is also fear-based because you're trying to avoid hell,
Totally fear-based. I mean, that's how the institution survived, basically, by keeping people in fear. You do A, B, C, you're taken care of. You don't, you're in trouble, and it's going to be forever you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And how to deprogram people that there is no judgment. There's nobody punishing us. We ourselves determine our...
I know, that part makes me so sad that that's how God is viewed, as this judgmental...
I can't even use the word God anymore because it's been so abused.
What do you use?
Source?
I say source, or the divine presence, or the cause, the ultimate cause. I mean, there are Sanskrit words that I use, Satchidananda, ever conscious, ever new bliss, where there's no concept of punishment or judgment or any of that. I mean, that's such an artifice. And I think we're at the evolutionary stage where we're needing to outgrow all those religious positions that have held people for the last few thousand years. And I think slowly we see the decline in people who go to church in America.
Or the changing of the church. Yeah, the church, there are churches that are, changing.
Growing,
yeah. And it is.
There's proof of that. We've had one of the past podcasts.
And it was amazing. One of our most awesome episodes. All right. So I guess this is shifting just a little bit here, but I wanted to know the importance of sound and mantra, because I know this is something you play with a lot. So how can that serve our spiritual growth, getting really, I guess, into the work of how sound plays in our lives and the vibration of it and all that, and mantra, which we know we talk about a lot on the show, but I would love to hear your perspective on this, Dena.
So in the higher ages, when there was a more expansive understanding of spiritual laws, mantra was used to create. There's a lot of power in the use of vibration, but you need a focused mind and a very concentrated mind to be able to awaken the creative energies that exist.
Okay.
So mantra was used to create things, and even now, every now and then, you find somebody who can materialize things, which is a kind of like a very, it's people get impressed by that, but it's just a certain practice that can be learned.
Yeah.
So mantras can also be used to destroy, and there were times during the declining ages where mantras, like the Mahabharata War, the Great War in India, about 1000 BCE, where the weapons were mantra weapons. And so they had powerful missiles that were released with the use of mantras. Even in Tibet, there were mantra wars between the monasteries in the 15th, 16th century. And so these spiritual beings used, in the higher ages, it was used to create, it was used for beneficial purposes, healing, but it can also be abused. Mantras could be abused and used to curse people, etc. So there's a lot of power in the word, but even, just those of us who are doing practice, the power of affirmation. Mantras awaken certain energies, but we do that within ourselves when we do affirmations. The power of the mind, we have not yet.
It's like our subconscious doesn't realize when we're saying it, whether it's true or not. So it just believes it, right? And then we're training.
That's the power. I mean, you look even just basic things like advertising. We can see it in our political realm now. If you say something enough, again and again and again and again and again, people are good without even using their discriminative ability. It goes into the subconscious and they just start believing that.
Yeah.
And so the power of repeating words penetrates. That's how advertising works.
Right.
Is it also something to do? I could have sworn I remembered hearing that it had something to do with how the way the tongue hits the roof of the mouth during certain mantras, as well as the sounds, like how vroom, that sound, which is my magic trick today, can calm anxiety. Like there's certain ways, certain sounds and vibrations in the certain way that the tongue hits the roof of the mouth during certain words that causes a certain effect. Or
that's true. The way that the tongue hits a certain part of the mouth activates certain parts of the brain. And so there's a connection, because everything is connected. There's a connection between different parts of the brain and the mouth. And so the rishis, the spiritual masters, knew how to activate certain parts of the brain through the use of sound.
So, for example, when you say Ganapati Gam Gamanapatiye Namaha, and that's to remove obstacles.
Yeah.
Is that more, where's the power in that? Is that more that we're asking Ganesh to remove an obstacle and we're just believing that it's going to happen? Or is that more the way that our tongue is moving when we say it? Or can you kind of break down that one?
For some people, it's praying to an external being. For other people, it's awakening that power within yourself. So Agni, which is the fire yagna, right? Agni, the fire. Everything in the external world is a symbol of something internally. The Agni represents the will. So all prayers begin with Agni. You first have to awaken your willpower, the higher willpower, in order to achieve anything. So all these prayers to deities are internal forces. The Vedic rishis knew that the deities were external and internal forces. So you're awakening that internal power within yourself that's aligning with an external force to create a certain effect. But all of those powers are within ourselves. All the energies of the deities are within ourselves. And so back to the first, the earlier question of, do you need an external being? Well, if you can tap those internal energies within yourself, I mean, a guru can help do that, can help awaken that. But if you can do that yourself, then you're at the source of everything, because the soul is just the awakened consciousness, part of the whole.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay. So a couple of things. One of the things, since we're talking about how, using these mantras creates not just physically a vibration that can have an effect on us physically, but also creates obviously a mind-body relationship. Really, it seems like it's happening here, and taps into that soul level. My mom, so recently my little kitty Mishka passed away, and I have been grieving. And one of the steps of grief that I've been stuck in is guilt. And so my mom brings over this book that she uses a lot in her life. I think it's called The 72 Names of God, but it's Sanskrit writing. They're little mantras that are to help you through obstacles or to affirm yourself and things like that. But the core of the practice that the book recommends is focusing on the image of the mantra. So the actual writing, and it's in Sanskrit, so it's not like I don't know how to read it, right? But to just burn it into your kind of memory, and that is supposed to release what you need to release or help you with whatever you're looking for there. Is that something you've ever played with? Is like this burning in of mantra in that visual way as well? I feel like it's like another layer on top of using it vocally.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. There's so many practices. There's so many ways to approach this. That's one way to approach it. I've had that with the Sanskrit name of Ram. To me is my deity. He's to me is like the cosmic reality. But I've gone through periods where I've just been writing his name again and again and again, writing his name and having that name resonate. It's a mantra. One of them, a mantra is repeat the name of.
Yeah, I love it.
And so it's definitely. I mean, it's one practice, one way of awakening those energies. I mean, it's all about awakening the energies within yourself,
getting aligned with that frequency.
Yeah.
Can you also share? I may be incorrect here, but is it like do, re, mi, fa? You say that and it works with the chakras. Is that correct?
I have heard that, but I don't know much about that really in me. Yeah. But there's certainly sounds with the chakras.
Yeah. Can you share one of those?
Well, another spiritual practice is listening to the sounds of the different chakras. So you close off your ears and you concentrate on the third eye and you listen. And each chakra gives off a different, you can hear the sound of a bell internally, you can hear the sound of Krishna's flute, which, with chakra, I think that might be the heart chakra. And then the Om, of course, is the spiritual eye. You can hear that. So these are different frequencies, different levels of vibration that you can hear. And by tuning yourself in, again, you're aligning yourself. So if you want to focus on the heart chakra, you just focus on that chakra. People see things, they see colors when they with the different chakras. My practice is Kriya Yoga, so it does work with the different chakras. But I don't, and I do sometimes do that the sound, the chakras with the sounds. And you merge with that sound. So if you're hearing the flute, you open your energy with that sound, and you can merge with that sound, and then that chakra opens.
So you could play essentially a meditative music or something to align you, to help you to align to those sounds as well. Yeah. Okay. So, and I wanted to ask as well with that, I don't even know if it's an ask so much, but this is something that I found valuable in my life, like incredibly valuable. And maybe this is a much more overt way of doing some sort of sound practice, but it's definitely, throat opening. So any suppressed anger or rage that I was shown throughout my younger life, domesticated to kind of keep down and suppress. I've now incorporated a practice where I literally yell as loud as I can if I want to yell loud, or I cuss or whatever it is that I need to get out. And it's just making sounds sometimes. And I do that in usually the car because, I don't have a forest to go yell in. I don't have somewhere that's very private. I don't think it's something you want to put on anyone else's shoulders. But that, like, yelling in the car has become one of the most important practices of mine, or singing sometimes. And usually it turns from yelling if there's some emotion I need to really move through my body, and I can't do it just by walking or hiking or some other way. I'll begin with this making sounds or yelling, or sometimes I'm in a goofy mood and I want to see what comes out, so I'll just start making the sounds, whatever that means. And then it usually turns into singing. And Jade, you've talked about here on the show that singing is, in order to sing, you have to have an open heart. And of course, that's what we want to get to, right? Like, we don't want to have a closed heart. We don't want to be angry and all these things. So I make sounds and sometimes yell and sometimes curse until I get to a place where I'm singing. And sometimes it doesn't all happen in the same sitting. Sometimes I need to come back to the practice, over and over, day after day or whatever. But is that something that's, first of all, I don't know, I kind of made that up, but I'm sure that it came naturally because it's something that works, for humans to do. So is that something you've played with, Dena?
Certainly chanting.
Yeah.
And I do listen to kirtan a lot, especially in the car. So I totally relate to that. I mean, I think no matter what you're experiencing, what kind of mood you're in, if you put on kirtan, that just brings you into another dimension and opens the heart. And if there's frustration, yelling or whatever it does to release that from your body, I mean, it's not good to hold these things in your body.
Yeah.
They produce ill effects. So whatever problematic, or uncomfortable energy you're feeling, it's good just to release it. Yeah. Some people do it through running, through exercise. I know a lot of people who exercise just to release the tension in their body.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that yelling has been critical for me.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, there's yelling ceremonies here in Austin. But I'm curious.
Yelling ceremonies in the forest, usually outdoors.
Yeah, it is in the forest. I'm curious, you brought up seeing colors on chakras. So I've always seen it taught in chakra books that I've read that it's the rainbow is how it's organized in colors from the root up. It's, red, orange, up to the rainbow. I'm curious why, if you know why, when I see chakras, they're not in those colors.
I don't know if it's the same for everybody. It may not be the same for everybody. I mean, so many things are, manifested individually for us. And, people see different numbers of petals. I've never seen that, but I know people who describe, the first chakra has this number of petals, and then of course there's the 1,000 petals at the top. I haven't seen that. And so everybody has a different experience. I mean, I think whatever you see, that's your particular experience of it. And that's real.
But in your practice, was it in the order of the rainbow that you guys saw the chakras, or was everybody different?
I don't see colors. I don't see colors. People see the third eye differently. Some people see a star. I just see a white light there. So I've not seen the star, and yet a lot of people talk about a star that they see. And
that's something I've always been curious about. But
I don't see colors with the chakras. I'm more sensitive to the sound. I can hear the sounds in the chakras. And there is a practice that I don't do, but I should do probably, which more is into the visualizing the different, how the chakras look. But I don't know, I haven't felt the need to do that.
Okay.
I find this stuff fascinating fascinating because I've not ever, I don't know, I guess I don't want to say I've never felt like I want to be able to see auras or chakras or hear the sounds or all these things. I think it's fascinating. I'm fascinated in all kinds of human systems. And I wonder if it's like a certain domestication you know during your life that you go through, or like it's a past life that brings you to this particular work, or interest causes the interest in the particular work of being able to see, or if you just start seeing and then you're like, what is this? You know, and it kind of catches you almost by surprise, and then you start digging there. Or how does it come about?
I think some of it might be our past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know in terms of my past life recall that I've had past life recalls in past lives, so it's not something that's new to me. You know, and I've in past lives have met different shamans and you know, who have opened certain things, and so then it's easier to access. If something's been opened before, it's easier to access. And I think it's everybody, you know, it's like everybody has their own history. You know, I mean, where you are is accumulation of where you've been. And so, yeah.
I think it's a good thing to bring up, especially for our listeners, because this is something I think early on I would have liked to have heard about or something, is that, you know, we all have our certain strengths and gifts, and then honing them is, you know, our chore here, or our job really, and maybe our pleasure as well. But it's not, you know, the different gifts are so important for their own individual way. And like, I certainly feel like I have my own gifts that are completely different, but are also about seeing into humans. Specifically, that's what they feel like they're about. And maybe this is really just a delivery for the listener, that if you're interested in humans and connecting, which I think we all pretty much are, but figuring out what your gift is, it doesn't have to look like the person next to you. You know, it doesn't like I've been friends with Jade forever, and she's been experimenting with this stuff and really honing her own gifts in this realm forever. And it's always been so interesting to hear her story, you know, and as it is to hear your story today. But I think maybe it's important that we don't let this weird dragon of like, oh, I have to have this particular gift or be able to do this skill or trick. Yeah.
Totally.
To be said out loud, I guess is all I wanted to say.
No, I mean, I have friends and spiritual friends who, you know, who want to remember their past births and don't. And I say to them, it's not relevant for you. If that's not what's given to you, it's not important for you. You know, for some reason that I'm working through my own, this is what's come to me, but I don't have other experiences. You know, I have friends who all kinds of astral travel and find themselves in other places and all that. And one it's a trap to actually look over and look at the gifts that another has, because you don't know what their history has been, what their learning needs to be for this life.
What they had to go through to get them. Like, I know a lot of people, the veil is thin in their aura to access the other dimensions because they had trauma, you know, so that's what caused the rip in the aura.
And we each have a different gift to offer. That's the beauty of the whole thing, is that we're unique. You know, one person, no two people are alike, and so we have a different journey. We have a different gift to offer. And the key is to find your gifts, is to find what it is you want to contribute.
And so do you feel that comes with like that slowing down and contemplating? And like you said, you found meditation and you're early on, and that is really what opened that up for you? Is that
Absolutely.
how we get?
I mean, for me, whatever your practice is, it doesn't have to be meditation. For me, it was meditation. But whatever your time of reflection and looking more deeply into life, however that works for you, whether it's prayer or just sitting still, whatever it is, I think that's crucial in order to know yourself, in order to know how you can best use your time here, in order to
I love that part of it. Yeah. I love it. It feels so magical. I brought up my past life with Mary Magdalene and her being my guide. I strongly feel that Mercedes is very much Isis energy, and she's always, you know, been so drawn to Egypt as well. And I know that Mary Magdalene and Isis are very much partners in work, and their work has been merging sexuality and spirituality, which is very much Mercedes and I's work, before we even knew that those were, you know, guides to work with. So when you just step back and look at it, it adds so much magic, and without allowing it to take you out of the now and focus too much on the other lives, it can add so much appreciation
and perspective. Yeah. It gives you just another layer of being able to see it from a place that's not, you're not drowning in it or overwhelmed by it. You can go like, oh, okay, I can see the goal and I can see how to get there. Gives you some alignment.
To me, it also adds excitement, just like, you know,
the magic is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times when I was doing a lot of traveling. I've made a number of trips to Egypt, And I remember meditating in the pyramids and then going down to the ancient Isis temple. And clearly I had a history there. It's not predominant in me now. It's not something that I have only vague memories of it, not concrete. And so it's not an activated force right now in me. My activating forces are all coming from India.
What does an activated force feel like? How do you feel the pull, or what does that look like?
I find myself mentally there a lot, tapping into the spiritual energies of the place, and they really pull at my heart.
Like a yearning.
It's like, but there's the yearning and all tremendous love.
Okay.
The India I see is not the India of today. It's the India of ancient times. And, you know, in one of my books, The Untold Story of Sita, I talk about a life as a servant in the household of Sita. And Sita is the wife of Ram. That's how she's known, as the wife of Ram. She's an avatar in her own right. But that has a very strong living reality within me today. And so I feel that I'm in communion with those forces of Sita and Ram. And more recently, you know, the book, When the Bright Moon Rises, talks about 3 lives in China, where I tapped into the Taoist energy. And so I'm thinking about that now because China is an emerging force in the world, right? And it has an ancient spiritual culture that's somewhere there.
Yeah.
But we're not so aware of it today, you know, because of all the other things that have kind of preoccupied us around China. So how to tap into that spiritual energy of the place? I mean, because I'm an activist in the outer field, so I do a lot of, you know, activist kind of work. I see my spiritual path and my activist roles as being connected, as going hand in hand. And I see India as having a future role because the spiritual energy is intact there, as having a future, as having an important role in the world today on the spiritual plane. China is also an important player. And so how does the awakening of these spiritual energies help guide the material reality? That's how I join together my spiritual life and my outer activities.
And so physical places, then you're saying, you know, hold these energies and can kind of hold them and wait for people to come to access better there, like almost a vortex in a sense, or
absolutely a vortex. I mean, you know, we know that about India. I mean, every time I've gone on a pilgrimage to one of the ancient places in India, and I've gone way up to the Himalayas many times, something happens. Something happens. It's like there's a portal there. And I've wanted to go to the sacred mountains in China. I was scheduled to go before COVID, then COVID hit. And I think it's important to tap into the spiritual energies of that place, because I think, you know, this is more my external work, is that how do we bond together in a spiritual realm to ease some of the outer tensions so that we don't end up killing each other, you know?
Other friends that have worked with Isis have said that there's a place in Egypt, I don't know if it's a temple. Yeah, it is a temple, that when they've gone there, it felt very much like what you're describing.
The Temple of Isis. It's a beautiful place. Yeah.
And then I really want to go to the south of France, the cave that Mary Magdalene fled to and did all the healing. So so awesome.
With Mirabai started?
No.
Oh, she does a lot of work around Mary Magdalene. What about Cynthia Bourgeaud? Do you know her work around Mary Magdalene?
I have her book. I've read her book. I've recently read 4 books on her, and I'm trying to remember which one was hers.
She wrote a book on Mary Magdalene.
Was it The Meaning of Mary Magdalene or Mary Magdalene Revealed? One of those two?
Not Mary Magdalene Revealed. That's Megan Watterson, I think.
Yep. It's The Meaning of Mary Magdalene. It's a purple cover. Yeah. Tom Shadyac loves her. He's writing a script on Mary Magdalene right now.
Wow. Cool.
So, and he's got so much Christ energy too. So I also we've got one more question before we go to our lightning round. Wanted to ask you about how the ancient Vedic clans were ruled by women. And I was curious if there was a message for women in this recent book of yours, because I know there are in the other 2 books of yours.
There's always a message for women.
Yeah.
In the Vedic days, I mean, the Vedas go back 10,000 years, but it was millennia before they were actually compiled. And so much has been lost in the process. We have just a fraction of what was. But there were women rishis. Their names are known. There were women who wrote parts of the Vedas, wrote some of the poems, the hymns of the Vedas. And in the part of the story, the early part of the story in the book talks about one of the time when, after the melting of the ice, because 11,000 BCE is when the ice began to melt, the oceans rose 400 feet. What interested me is that was another time where humanity faced melting of the ice, and there were a lot of migrations. And so when the ice melted, the communities migrated from the sea into the forests, and which were just beginning to bloom, actually. Forests were growing. And then there came a time when they were migrating toward the rivers. And so this takes place during the Saraswati River civilization, where the clans And the clan that I was part of was ruled by a woman. I don't know that all the clans were ruled by women, but this clan was traditionally led by a woman. And this woman had 2 daughters and 3 sons, and both women were unable to lead the clan, and it became a crisis, and it got later resolved. But the character that I identify with, Sundari, is taken in by a woman sage Gayatri, and taught many things about the spiritual realities, although she didn't understand them. She wasn't at the level where she could understand them. But in the book, it goes into the deeper meaning of the Vedic teachings as taught by the women. So I think the message in all my books is that there was a time before recent history when women and men were equally supporting each other, doing the teaching and doing their things. And then with the declining times, as we approach the Kali Yuga, a patriarchal mindset, or a mindset of domination. I don't even like to call it patriarchal, but domination, because it was more than just gender domination. It was, people started taking slaves, didn't have that in the higher ages. People started conquering other nations, didn't have that in the higher ages. People started dominating nature, didn't have that in the higher ages. So it was this need to dominate, to be better, above the others. And this is what we need to change, this concept of domination and so, women are part of that, of moving beyond the mindset where we can't be an equal contributor.
Yeah. And when you said earlier about, your mentors and gurus, you could feel their love pouring into you. I feel like this time we're in right now, where we're adjusting from that very dominating or domineering place, is largely about softening. And love, I think, is largely about softening, about being able to kind of allow, and literally soften, literally receive and allow whatever we need right now. And there's a gentleness there. There's a love there that is coming in full force. I feel that we're part of it. We're all doing this, especially as women. I think I don't know. It's just beautiful, I think, to be alive right now and see this shift happening.
Exactly. I love that word, softening. I think it is a softening, and the shift is happening. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah, we're in the middle of it. Yeah,
in the middle of it.
I also wanted to bring up and acknowledge that the profits from this book will be donated to the Global Peace Initiative of Women to empower people everywhere in their quest to make this a more peaceful world. And I just wanted to thank you for your work in that. And thank you for all of your work with the Global Peace Initiative of Women. And I just honor you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me. It was wonderful talking to both of you. Thank you.
We've got a few more lightning round questions before we let you go. Okay. Mercedes, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So the first question is, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
If I could hug my younger self, I would say, be happy.
If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
The Untold Story of Sita. Sorry, it's my book. No, let me correct that. Autobiography of a Yogi.
Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yeah.
All right. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Love is the foundation for all. Love is the fabric of the universe. Tune in with that love. Feel that love.
Thank you. Before we let you go, where can people find you online?
Well, I have a public page, Facebook page. So it's Dena Merriam public page. And I have the Global Peace Initiative of Women has a Facebook page, and also the website, gpi.org. And so you can contact me at any one of those places.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much.
It was a great conversation. It was wonderful meeting both of you, and just continue on with your wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate that. We appreciate you being a light in this world, and we're so glad to have gotten to pick your brain for a little bit. So appreciate you.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.